proprietary.
I'm a shareholder.
Now, be sure to let me know, too, Julia, when there's like 10 minutes left.
Okay.
All right, so each candidate has their 2 minutes. I had a miscommunication with John Hill about that on Tuesday, where I thought there was only 5 minutes, but he was actually saying 15.
Well, that worked in our favor. Okay, it's playing back. We are live.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Scott. I'm the enterprise editor at The Sun. Welcome to our fifth and final candidates debate. Today we have with us 4 candidates running for school committee, 3 incumbents. We have Dave Conway, we have Jackie Doherty, and to my right is Jim Leary. And sitting behind Jim, we have challenger Robert Gignac. I'm going to ask them some questions, and they'll also be given a 2-minute opportunity for closing statements. And I'd just like to remind all of you to vote on November 8th. Right? So without further ado, we'll just get into some questions. Dave, I'll start with you. There was no shortage of headlines out of the school committee over the past couple weeks, 10 days, primarily concerning executive session minutes and the teachers' contract. Do you feel that collective bargaining with the teachers' union, or any city union for that matter, should be done in public session, and why or why not?
Well, I think that as a school committee body, we took a vote, I believe, I think it was last year, we took a vote to see if we decided we would want to have it in open session, and that passed.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I'm concerned, it would be fine with me if we had an open session. It really doesn't. Either way is fine with me.
Either way.
Either way is fine with me.
Jackie?
Well, I think, as you know, given the recent turn of events, I think clearly we need some mechanism for getting accurate information out to the community. For my own part, I regret speaking on background to a reporter about negotiations, and I apologize for the pain it's caused my colleagues. It's also made me realize, there were other avenues, but perhaps as we go forward, we need to look at what are those other avenues, and one might be periodic releases of information that both parties agree on, but some way that the public can be aware of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I think would be useful.
Robert?
I would like to see open executive sessions regarding contract negotiations. But both parties need to agree upon that, and I don't know if that is going to happen. Another idea would be have semi-private executive sessions where the meeting itself would be private, and then periodically bits of accurate information would be released to the public. So both the members of the union will understand what's going on, and as will the public. So.
And Mr. Leary?
No, I appreciate the question. Last year, Mr. Leahy and a colleague on the school committee and myself had a joint motion that actually addressed this and actually requested that we do it in public, and the school committee as a whole approved it. And what we envisioned was exactly what was just articulated, that you don't have negotiations in front of the camera. You have negotiations in private, and after a period of time, whether it be a month or 3 months, each side is required to release their actual last best offer at that point in time. It's done in many other jurisdictions. The state of Texas does this for all of their unions, public, and it seems to work pretty well in Texas. I think the important part is that it's accurate and that people have the same rules. I think the public demands it. It's their money. And the union membership actually demands it. They need to know exactly where their leadership is leading them. So I think it's something that's long past due. I'm glad that the committee supported our motion and look forward to trying to get that done in the future.
I'd like to go back to one of your comments, Jackie. You said that you regret speaking on background about that issue. I'd like to get you to elaborate on that and tell us specifically, why do you regret that? And this follow-up question, and all of you guys can answer too, is there's been some calls that you ought to resign from the school committee based on what you did. So can you answer the first question, and then how did this whole resignation thing, what's your reaction to that? And do you think that that's an overreaction?
Okay, I'll start with the first part
Yep,
of that.
that's fine.
I think the regret comes from the pain and discomfort it's caused my colleagues.
What pain and discomfort that? How has it caused pain and discomfort? I mean, leaks from City Hall and the school committee meetings have been going on for as long as I've been in the city.
I'm sure that's true, but just the way it seemed that other people were thought to be the ones who had, so that, that really compelled me. I needed to come forward. I feel that, I know my colleagues share my frustration with the current system because it doesn't allow us an equal playing field. And what I mean by that is when a union leader can beat us up with impunity, frame a false media message, and release confidential information, how then do we do our job of protecting the interests of the community and acting as responsible stewards of the school system? The fact that Paul Georges breached the confidentiality agreement first doesn't excuse my actions. Two wrongs don't make a right. I get that. In my frustrated attempt to fight for programs and services for our kids and to save jobs for our staff, I mean, that was really where the frustration was coming from. And I know I'm not alone in that frustration, but I crossed a line. And I see now that perhaps there were other avenues, such as filing a complaint or contacting the media with information that I had that he was breaching confidentiality. Although at that time my information was hearsay. It wasn't until later that some of these people came forward. But I spoke in the heat of the moment. It was not my intention to breach confidentiality. And I regret doing that because I am a responsible citizen. I believe in following the laws. But it's made me see even more clearly that we need to have changes going forward.
And what about
that was not the best course of action.
What about this whole call for resignation?
I didn't know there was a call for resignation. I feel like I have been a tireless fighter for the Lowell Public Schools, for the citizens of this community, for the children in our classrooms. And I would not resign, and I think it would be a huge loss to the district if I did. If the community does not feel that I have been advocating fiercely for the right reasons, I'm not saying I don't make mistakes. I'm not saying I don't regret things I've said. Who hasn't? I think that will come very shortly, in a few weeks. We'll know.
Okay. David.
Question?
The question is, why do you think this has become so emotional? And the call for Jackie to resign, what do you think about that?
Well, I think first of all, when the negotiating process is extremely complicated and very frustrating, and I think that the frustration is seen on both sides of the fence. I think that we have been negotiating for the last 3 years, and there has been frustrating moments, as I said, on both sides. The only thing that you have to keep in mind is that the law is the law, and you can't pick the day to follow that law and not to follow the law. And I think that we have taken a solemn oath when we're sworn in, and with that solemn oath, it means that we have to abide by the laws on the federal, state, and the local level. And in this situation, one of our colleagues went astray, and again, the apology came forward, which I think that we all appreciate that, and I'm sure the city of Lowell appreciates that. I think going forward, I think the concentration, as far as I'm concerned, is not whether it's resignation or not resignation, but how do we get the contract, how do we resolve it, and to go forward. That's what I'm interested in right now, and I think that my colleagues are probably believe the same way, and I wouldn't be surprised that the union feels that way also. I think
Thank you.
Well, I think this instance, both parties have reached their boiling point. On the school committee side, unfortunately, Ms. Doherty was the one to reach the boiling point on the school committee side. Mr. Georges has reached his boiling point a little earlier, I believe. And that tells me that there's a flaw in the current process. It's taken quite a while for this to happen, but there's something wrong with what's going on. And that, I believe, is the process. I think maybe if we follow the idea of having a semi-private negotiation session, that accurate information will be released to the public. Now, both parties should agree on that information that's being released, and that will settle some of the frustration, I believe, that Ms. Doherty felt. I don't think resignation is appropriate. She's been on the school committee for a long time, and she's done some tremendous work. And there's 2 weeks left before the election. Resignation, I think, is uncalled for.
Thank you. And Jim?
Thank you. No, I think first, Ms. Doherty, thank you for apologizing. It takes a lot of courage. It's not easy to admit when you made a mistake, and I think that's really the first step in terms of acknowledging we made a mistake. We all make mistakes. It's important that we admit them and we apologize when we do that. I think going forward at this point, as far as resignation, we nail that down. No, we have an election in 2 weeks, and the voters will have a decision if they want to remove Jim Leary or remove whoever, and elect who they choose to sit in their seats. I think it's important, though, to look at in terms of your overall question. How do you do this in a method that's going to be of value? Now, we're dealing with, Mr. Conway said, complex times. There's not a lot of financial resources at this point. What I think we should be looking at is similar to what other legislative bodies do. The City Council, not only in Lowell, but across the state of Massachusetts, having one individual leading that and having different, like the school committees, actually be the ratifying board, much like many city councils. This is not something that's new just to the city of Lowell. This is done throughout the Commonwealth. You don't have the state of Massachusetts state representative negotiating state contracts. You don't have the state senators negotiating contracts. What you have is the legislative body in a position. The only one that does it, other than some smaller select boards, are school committees. So you got to ask the question: why is that? Is it because we do it better than a single individual or a qualified person to do it? I think not. I think the reason why other legislative bodies don't do it is because it's not as effective. That's not saying the unions are doing a bad job. They have a difficult job as well. But you need some change in these issues. More public, that's appropriate, that's meaningful, and change the way that we're doing that method makes a lot of sense.
All right. One last question on the contract. The former Senator Steve Panagiotakis was quoted as saying, not too long ago, that the private sector can no longer afford the public sector. Do you see the time coming when a board like the Lowell School Committee simply says to the UTL or any other union, there is no money for raises? I know people in the private sector that haven't had raises for years. There's just no money, no raise. Robert?
Well, I think that point is going to come. I know right now...
Aren't we already there?
We may be. 85% of the budget goes to personnel, and $17 million goes to insurance, healthcare, and dental. And we need to control these costs. And by these costs, I do mean salaries. And I also mean medical insurance costs. Now, there's a lot that needs to be done. And unfortunately, as an outsider, I don't know exactly everything that's going on. And I respect the private meetings and what goes on there, but as an outsider, I don't know exactly what's going on in the committee. And I feel the public feels that way as well. And if I'm elected on the committee, I feel I'll get a better understanding of where this money is going, why it's going there, and how long can we afford this.
Jim?
No, he's right. Robert Crutch's right. 85% of our budget is personnel costs, and a large part of that is health insurance costs. So I think it's the remaining part is what we spend on technology and other resources that we have. So there's a finite area you're looking at before you start hitting human resources. I think what the senator said is essentially true. If the private sector isn't generating tax revenue, you can't pay for the public sector. That's not to say the public sector doesn't pay the taxes. They do. I think the issue then is really how do you control that? And you can't just tax people into getting revenue. You have to look for creative ways of doing different things and doing it better. And I think technology is one part of that. And being on the school committee with my colleagues, we've been unfortunately tasked with cutting almost $20 million over the past 4 years, if you include the Title I federal monies. It's been a major hurdle to do, and we've done it. We've done it through data-driven budgeting, looking at where our resources and prioritizing where the students and the teachers' resources are first. Hasn't been easy. We've laid off people, we all laid off people, taken votes to lay off people we know, and we've hurt people we know. But we've done it to make sure the system was in a position to make a good recovery once additional revenues have come in place, which where we are at right now.
David?
I think the senator obviously referring to the state economy, and because he obviously has had firsthand knowledge of what was happening and realizing that the monies were not there to be brought back to the local communities, and oftentimes we talked about that, and there's no doubt about it. The monies are extremely tight. We have gone through budgets as I've been on the school committee for 3 years, but I've also been involved with the school department for a number of years. And in the last 5 or 6 years, I think we've had approximately 500 positions that have been cut from the school system. And it's devastating. But the money is not there, and I think it's perfectly clear. So that each and every dollar that is being spent, I think, I know it's overused, but it has to be spent as wisely as possible. And I've often said those monies have to be put where it actually affects the classroom, because that's where learning takes place, and that's where the education is needed for our children. So again, time after time, the committee, I know, has looked and scrutinized over many of these different programs to make sure that we were spending the money as wisely as possible. But money is extremely difficult, very tight.
Jackie?
I think we are there. I think if you look at the last, since 2003, really, when I first became this, activist, we've been reducing our staff. And I think that's why we're, in a third year still trying to get a contract, because the money wasn't there. And our obligation is to the citizens of this city and their children. That's our obligation. How do we manage what we have in diminishing resources and increasing costs? As you mentioned, the health insurance keeps going up. How do we manage that responsibly? So I agree completely with the senator that we are not in a position, it's not just about the state not having the funds. I mean, I know I have family members, friends, neighbors, losing jobs, getting cutbacks, and the way I look at it is the overriding responsibility is to the citizens of the community and the children in our schools. And so
You've all been eloquent. I want a yes/no answer. Is
We're
it?
there.
Is it, no. Is it conceivable that the Lowell School Committee can say to any union in its purview right now, there is no money for raises? Jackie?
yes.
Robert?
Yes.
And Dave?
Yes.
All right, fair enough. Let's move on to the Latin Lyceum. One of your former colleagues was instrumental in forming the Latin Lyceum years ago, and that was Bill Topier. And it's been everything I've read about it seems that it's been a terrific program for those students who are lucky enough and smart enough to get into it. Although lately it seems there's a flurry of activity about the Latin Lyceum. It needs a leader. It's not doing this. It's not recognizing students at graduation. It seems to me that program really should be on cruise control. It doesn't seem to be. Why is that, and how can you improve it?
Well, the reason why it's getting all the attention that it is because very engaged parents have students in the Lyceum that would like to see it succeed further than it already has. When I was at the high school, some of my friends entered the Lyceum when we were freshmen and then later on dropped out for many reasons.
Were you in the Latin Lyceum?
I was not.
Okay, just had to make that clear.
I was not. But there are some flaws, as there are in any program, and it should be annually reviewed. Now, perhaps it wasn't reviewed as often as it should have been, and I believe that should have been done at the administration in the high school before it made its way up to the school committee.
Does it need its own leader, like the freshman academy and like the
Business
math department
academy.
head? And does it need its own Latin Lyceum director?
Well, not necessarily a Latin Lyceum director. I believe a guidance counselor could hold both roles.
Oh, really?
As an administrator and a guidance counselor for all the students. I know a guidance counselor in the average house is responsible for hundreds of students. One guidance counselor can handle 160 students for the Latin
With their
Sam.
current workload.
Well, that would be their workload.
Okay, all right. Jim?
No, it's a great question. I think the primary thing that has been going on since Billtopia has designed the Latin Lyceum, it really is that his vision still goes forward, but it has to be changed. And I think what you've seen over the past, since I've been on the committee, every year there's been different issues that have developed, and finally you have a group of parents who came to the plate and put a plan together and presented something to a Lowell High School subcommittee, which was just aired last week. We just had a meeting 2 nights ago. I think some of their proposals make a lot of sense, and that should be done. I think other proposals are at a higher level, and the school committee should be engaged in, much like what we just talked about in terms of the guidance counselor or the department head of a Latin Lyceum or leader of a Latin Lyceum. I think that needs to, what we've done at the last committee meeting is request the superintendent and by de facto really the headmaster to design a plan that actually would be making that work, whether it be a joint guidance counselor or department head or some other fashion. We're really looking to the headmaster, Ed Rosemary, to bring that plan before the superintendent and have them bring it before the school committee. So we've had a good dialogue, some great recommendations. Now it's a question of how do you implement those recommendations.
Dave?
Well, the Latin Lyceum I think is a great program, and I worked with that program for a number of years. Many of the Latin Lyceum students were in my house when I was a housemaster. And again, you have, as one of my colleagues said, that you have a group of parents that are very engaged in the process. I think that what is a little confusing is that I know that the years that I was down there was always someone that was, should we say, in charge, and that was Wendy Jack. And obviously, the headmaster, the time being Joe Samaras, was the ultimate leader of that particular program. I didn't think that had changed, to be honest with you. And when you talk about having one individual, I think sometimes because of budget cuts, we have found that many administrators take on more than one role. You might find a department head taking on 2 departments or perhaps even 3 departments. So I think the whole program has to be evaluated, and I would like to see perhaps somebody from the outside, maybe from the university, come in and take a look at it and give us an evaluation of the program. But again, I think it's a program that has been great success, and it needs to continue. As I said the other night in the school committee meeting, I am a little disturbed at the fact that many of the things that are small fixes were not taken care of.
Such as?
Such as the acknowledging them at graduation. I don't understand that. The transcript. When the transcript goes out, the college that receives that transcript should see that it is an exam schedule, an exam program within a high school. And that in itself should stand right out, but it should be explained a little bit more than it is right now. And I think those are some of the changes that can be done very easily. Some of the other changes about, do we have somebody to direct it specifically? That takes a little more it's a little more complicated. And the other thing I want to make sure that I say is that when these changes take place, the people that actually do the work, whether it's guidance counselors and so forth, these are the people that we have to talk with to find out what the best direction to go in.
Okay, great. Thank you. Jack?
Well, I think that we got an evaluation. That's the packet we've been going through. It's about, I don't know, it seemed like 100 pages with the appendices. And, in hindsight, if it had come before us, I would have voted to go to an outside body and have them do the research, although I don't know what that price tag would have been. One of the parents talked about, I don't know, who was it? Maybe you said at the meeting, it could have cost us, $75,000 to get an evaluation of that comprehensive, but then you would have had an outside group doing it, as opposed to a group of parents, administrators, teachers, students. Well, all those people would have been part of it, but somebody else running it, and there was a representative from UMass Lowell on that evaluation committee. So given that, we've got this very in-depth, very good professional evaluation, took a lot of work, has a huge amount of data. What it says to me is 2 things. First of all, we have an incredible program in the Latin Lyceum. Our students are outperforming Boston Latin students, our Lyceum students. The problem is it hasn't been growing. It's had what? It's in its 11th year. We have huge attrition problems. All these kids migrating out sophomore year, or students who test in and choose not to take it because it's got some kind of bad rap. And to me, the things that the recommendations that came out of that evaluation, which I would like to remind everybody, they were consensual by the group of people who participated, asking for someone to be named a leader. And I know that Dr. Jack was considered the de facto leader, but Dr. Jack has a list of things that she's responsible for, and people under her that then provide the direct services, like department chairs report to her, that sort of thing. So we need somebody. We've got it for every other program over there. As one of the parents pointed out, you've got it for ROTC, you've got it for the swim team, you've got, so that would be and that was the motion I made. Give us a plan for how to do that. I realize finances are tough, but we make decisions every day to provide additional funds for students with special needs. And I'm talking about students who are at risk of dropping out. We have these recovery programs, students who are at the high school who can't read at their grade level. We have programs, and I don't want to take away from any of that. I'm not bringing that up to say that we should. I'm bringing it up to say this is a very good program. I think it needs a little support right now to really be what it could be. It could grow and be so much stronger. And as someone who has children who are in both, and especially with my youngest one, so many of her friends were not choosing it. That to me is a problem. This should be an honor. It's something we need to provide some support to.
We can talk about this for a minute, Dave.
Yeah, just very quickly here. It is a great program. There's no doubt about it. And what I think needs to happen going forward, perhaps even a pilot program, but it should be introduced into the middle schools somehow too.
Yes.
I would like to see that. And again, I do not know that model right now, but I think that there needs to be the appropriate administrators and guidance counselors and teachers sit down and figure out how do we have a feeder system for this particular program. That's what I'd like to see going forward.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that too. Just real quick, I agree with what Mr. Conway just said. I think important though too is that you got to look at any program that you have. You're going to have to make adjustments, and not everything's going to be static. Life isn't static. Latin Lyceum isn't static. The swim team isn't static. They're all going to have challenges. And what's good, the good thing that came out of this that every parent said at this last meeting is our teachers are great.
Right.
Best teachers. So the most important thing that we have in place is our teachers are fantastic. That's pretty good. Let's start from there. And the other beautiful thing they said is we're beating Boston Latin. Well, not too shabby. So I think, obviously you have to manage things more efficiently. You're always going to have those issues come up. It's a question of how do you reach those challenges.
Robert?
Now, you had asked me if I attended the Latin Lyceum, and my answer was
no, Joe.
my answer was no, and the reason why was because I had never heard of it.
Oh.
And many of my friends at my school had never heard of it. And
What years were you at Lowell High School?
I graduated in 07.
Okay, and the Latin Lyceum has been in existence for 11 years?
1999.
Is the school doing all it can? Is the administration doing all it
No.
can to promote the Lyceum?
Not enough.
Not enough.
That's what came
So
out.
not to steal the floor, okay.
Now, in that packet, there was a suggestion Mr. Osmeric would send a letter out to all the parents in the middle schools. And that's a good step. However, somebody should be visiting in those schools to be telling them, the students, face-to-face, all that this program has to offer. If you send a letter, and if a parent sees Lowell High School, my son's not going there, toss it in the trash. Some people just don't know. If someone comes into the middle schools and talks face-to-face with the students, with the parents, and I think this program will grow enormously.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to add to something that Dave said about the middle schools. One of the reasons that came out in the report that many students don't stay with the Latin Lyceum is they're overwhelmed by the expectations because they haven't been properly challenged earlier. So we know we've got to do a better job from K to 8 to really challenging our highest achieving students from the very beginning, so that when they get there, they're up to the workload.
But all true. But one point out that we need to make is a lot of places like the Stocklosen, not too far from here, actually had how many kids test in this year and actually get in.
Right.
Because those principals at that particular school is pushing this program. So it is like a pitch to push a program. And the thing is, is sometimes when you're in there for 11 years, programs become, okay, we have this program and you forget it. Now we have the portal, which is a different issue, but now you have certain people pushing that program. It's something that even 10 years down the road with that program, you're going to need to refresh and look at it. Every program you have has to be looked at. And you try to do it annually. Reality is you probably get it biannually every 3 years. But you need to do it because there's good things like Wheaton Boston Latin that I didn't even know, which is pretty cool.
It's very cool because they don't have even half the support. We don't have half the supports they do.
Okay, I'm going to change subjects. And Robert, you're up.
Sure.
Another high-profile issue that broke over the last week or so is a proposal to open a new homeless walk-in center on Kirk Street in the St. Anne's Episcopal Church just down the street from Lowell High School. I don't believe it's an overnight facility like the Lowell Transitional Living Center, but nonetheless you would have homeless folks coming into the downtown and utilizing its services. I guess today they decided to take a step back and kind of work with it. And, how do you feel about the use of that property being the proposed use of that property being so close to the high school?
I feel very uncomfortable with that.
Okay, just tell us why.
One of the issues that I'm pushing forward is safety at the high school, and this being literally next door to the high school is very frightening. The students that walk over from the freshman academy to the main building are going to be witnessing. They're going to be seeing these individuals and maybe interacting with them, and we don't want that to happen to our students. We want our students to feel safe 100% of the time. And also when people come in to visit the school, when colleges come in to visit, when parents come to visit from their children went to private middle schools and they want to send them to the high school, and they're going to walk by that, it's frightening. And my number one issue with that, as I said, is the security. If this goes through, I'd like to see more security at the high school and a much tighter security.
Okay. Jim?
Well, good question. I think we talked a little bit this earlier before we even started tonight. I think, one, I want to know more about it. First, I didn't even know it was, I thought it was a homeless shelter initially when I heard the program, which obviously has significant concerns. We are concerned. I wish we were on the ground floor before they started making these plans, but we're not. So what we need to do now is really, and I think we're beginning to do that process, finding out exactly what is going on. I appreciate that they're taking a step back to look at it, and we will become involved in terms of how this is actually going to be. Who is actually coming into this facility? So once we know that, then we can make more of a judgment in terms of should we fight it or stop it, or should we work around it. I think we're in downtown Lowell. We're a city of 105,000 people. We have all kinds of types of facilities downtown where people go all day, and we need to manage it. But I think the first thing is find out what exactly they're doing, become part of that discussion, and then if there are real concerns, then we stand up and we say we don't think it's acceptable. But we don't know that yet. To simply say something is not appropriate at this point.
Dave?
I think that we're not privy to the information, actually. We're not available to it, and I really don't know that much about it except for what I might read in the paper. And today they did talk about pulling back, and I'm glad to see that. It certainly would concern me. I'd have to find out a lot more about it before a judgment can be made, but on the surface, I don't think it's an appropriate place at this particular, I don't think it's an appropriate place so close to the high school. Again, I'd like to know more about it and find out exactly what this entails. As Jimmy just said, I thought it was a homeless shelter, and that's what I thought too at the beginning. So I don't really know the particulars, and I think that we need to be part of that process.
Jackie?
Well, I really don't have much of a different answer. My understanding is, the piece that bothers me, as well as being downtown near the high school, there's a daycare facility right there. I'm not thinking of the name of it right now. So my first feeling is there's got to be a better location. I think that when you're talking about homeless people, many of them have mental health issues. There are safety concerns. So,
one thing I do want to say is I'm surprised that the school committee hasn't come forward with some opposition, because the council, many of the councilors have come with strong opposition.
Well, one has anyway. So
with one has. Yeah. But some of the large respected businesses in the downtown area have come forward to show their discomfort with this and that they're against it. And a building with 4,000 individuals, students and staff, to have this right next door, I'm not comfortable with it, and I think the school committee should stand with the council, should stand with the businesses, and do what they can to get informed first, and then some sort of support to see how they can interact.
Okay, I'd like to just follow up with you on something you said earlier. You can all comment on this. You talked about the high school,
Yeah.
safety of the high school, and that's one of your utmost priorities. Are you concerned, or do you have any sense that the high school is not safe for students and staff?
Well, I bring that up because when I was there were 9 security guards. Now there are only 7 with budget cuts. Now that's not enough per floor in each building.
Now, does that include the police officers, or
No,
is that a separate?
That's separate. That's
Okay.
separate. There's 4 police officers, I believe.
Okay.
And with that, when I was at the high school, there's a surveillance room with screens all over the walls. And there was a security guard that sits in that room and watches these screens all day long to prevent things from occurring. And that position is no longer there. There's no one watching.
So are those screens?
It's simply to record what's happening.
Okay.
And what I propose is to have a criminal justice major from the University of Middlesex, a junior, senior, come here for an internship, watch the screens all day long, call into the security to prevent instances. Now, if there's a homeless shelter down the street, I'd like a camera on those doors on Kirk Street to be watching what's going on. If anybody's walking by the doors, I want the intern to call security or police officer to step outside and make sure the students are unsafe.
But in your view, is the high school unsafe?
It's not unsafe, but I feel it could be safer. It could be safer.
Okay. Well, we're going to go right away.
Sure. I think it's important to know that the high school is safe. It doesn't mean that there's not instances that can develop. That happens in suburbia. Just happened in Neshoba down the road. So to suggest that it's not safe is simply not having the knowledge. But that doesn't mean you don't continue being vigilant. We have trained law enforcement professionals there who are not only police officers but also are trained in education and looking to prevent instances. We do have security guards. We have house masters. We have a variety of different cameras. Almost every part of that building besides the bathrooms are on camera. We would have, believe me, if it was legal, we would have cameras in the bathroom as well. I like the idea of an intern. That's an interesting idea to come in and help out. We always look for different ways of improving. As far as it's not a homeless shelter, I guess, but it's something that the school committee is definitely taking a lead active role. We're not trying to be dramatic and trying to get an issue. We're trying to resolve an issue. That's one thing that this committee does, is resolve issues as opposed to jump in and make headlines. We want to make sure things aren't going to be injured. Students are going to be injured.
Is there an insinuation in that?
I don't know. I think it's a question where, do we have it or don't have it? I don't think we have that information. I think obviously we'll be concerned and be vigilant.
Mr. Conway, as a former
House
master, right?
Yes. We obviously have our issues at the high school. Is it a safe environment? Yes, I think it is a safe environment. And again, I've been associated with that environment for many, many years as a student, a teacher, and administrator. Can you always be looking to improve that? Yes, that's why we have weekly meetings with house masters to sit down and say, okay, how do we make things better? What are you hearing out there? You bring security in, you bring the resources officers in, and it's a constant communication to make sure that building stays as safe as it's possible. I think the idea of the internship that Bob just mentioned, I think is a great idea to bring in some other resources. Once again, this is an opportunity to reach out to the community and to reach out to a partner, to have them come in and to help out. I think that's a great opportunity. You know, back I heard some issues about the discipline too, and I know that one of the police officers broke his ankle, and I went to the superintendent's office and we called a meeting of discipline and safety, and I asked the superintendent to invite house masters, security, police, and all the parties involved. And each one of them reported, the people that did show up, that it was safe, there were no problems there.
Okay. Jackie, I know you want to speak on this.
I absolutely believe the high school's safe. I wouldn't send my own children there if I didn't, including a rather petite girl. We have invested substantially in technology at the high school in terms of safety. We have cameras everywhere. I think the number's like 190, but don't hold me to it. And the cameras are not in the bathrooms, but they're in the hall outside the bathroom doors. So which was how they were able to determine the student who went in the bathroom and started a fire in the wastebasket. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. You have 3,300 teenagers, you're going to have issues. We have reduced our security officers, and that has been an issue, although I was not aware until this moment that we're not watching those television screens. That command center is huge in terms of the importance it plays, not only recording crimes as they're happening, but the preventative nature of it. So I'm going to get on that Monday to make sure that because the other thing we did when we reduce staff was we looked at staggering some schedules in terms of when people come in, when, if you got someone there earlier, have somebody come in a little later that stays after school when the sports programs are still going on. My understanding, the biggest problem over there has been around theft in the locker rooms. While kids are at practice, they break into the lockers and things like that. But, I think it's all been said in terms of being vigilant. I love this idea of pulling UMass Lowell students into it because, frankly, we don't have money to start bringing back staff. I mean, that's a real issue.
Dave, quickly.
Yeah,
30 seconds.
I was in the high school approximately a month ago, and I went through the area of the resource officers, and I happened to see someone sitting there watching the cameras. Now, I don't know if that's something that's all the time, or they just happen to be there for that particular moment. So at this particular time, I'm not sure if they're manned all the time, but I know that when I was there, I did see them at least on a temporary basis.
I'd like to move on. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Make it quick.
I just want to mention, I visited a high school 2 weeks ago and asked Mr. Ismeric that very question, and he was very forward that no one watches the cameras. They're simply to record.
Well, that would be a significant issue.
Yeah,
that
I think
would be addressed because that's news.
Right.
Before we get to closing statements, I just want to try to hit a couple more issues just quickly. We talked about a tight budget, okay? And keep your answers brief here. Are user fees conceivable in a school department like Lowell, like they have in the towns where families pay $500 to play one sport, a little less if they have more kids? Is that a possibility or conceivable, Dave?
I would say no. I would not be in favor of the user fees. I think that in a city, to be quite frank with you, many of our families can't afford it, and I think that what that would do would be a devastation to our sports and our clubs and our activities, and I think it would really hurt Lowell High School.
Jack.
I would say only as a last desperate attempt to keep the programs in place if we couldn't afford it, and I would only support it if it was subsidized for students so that nobody was excluded because of inability to pay.
Robert.
I agree with Jackie. The only way it would work in a district like this is if it was subsidized for students that couldn't afford it, and for those that can't afford it, if it's very cheap, inexpensive.
Right.
$500 is not inexpensive.
Jim.
I agree with Jackie. However, you got a lot of parents already that are paying a lot of money, but it's not called a fee. They're raising money doing, they're selling raffle tickets, washing cars, washing anything moving, and doing a variety of other different things. And one has put out to me, many parents have said to me, I'd actually be cheaper if I paid a fee. But it is complicated because there are kids who would go without. So it's not an easy issue.
I imagine all of you are campaigning, you're knocking on doors, am I correct? When you knock on doors, what is the most common statement you hear from a constituent or a voter about the Lowell School Department? Jackie?
I think people are concerned with the cuts we've been making over the years. I mean, the fact that we have one librarian in a district this size, and she's only at the high school, that's the concern I'm hearing, to watch us continually be cutting into the staff.
Right.
Cutting is a big thing that I'm hearing is how many cuts that the school committee has had to make. But I'm also hearing communication issues that people are frustrated with.
What kind of communication?
Communication that the public is not fully informed on how they can engage in the Lowell public school systems. In a district this size, it's very difficult to outreach to parents. In order for a student to success, oftentimes it needs strong support from the home. And in this district, there's language, barriers and stuff like that, but the district needs to, which I believe Superintendent Franco is working very hard to, improve the communication at all levels. But I think the school committee should push her even farther than she already has been.
Okay, Jim.
No, I agree with Robert. I think the biggest thing here is communication on different issues. You do have issues where you get a different area in the city where something's going on at a particular school that's germane to that particular school. That's always the biggest issue. So if you're walking in Pawtucketville, there's certain issues with the Wang and McAvenue and Pawtucketville Memorial. But the big issue is really how do we communicate to a system where people are speaking so many different languages and people, frankly, they're overwhelmed. The other thing you hear really is people they're feeling the pinch. The economy is really hurting people. Really hurting people.
And on that, we'll move to closing statements. You each have 2 minutes. Who wants to go first? I'll leave it up to you guys. Doesn't matter.
I'll go first. Okay.
Jim.
First, I thank you for the opportunity. I enjoy the format. I think it's an excellent opportunity for folks to see the candidates in a more of an atmosphere where you're not competing with 20 other people. In our case, 8 other people. You have 8 excellent people that are running for school committees, so I think you have a difficult decision in selecting one of our people running. We have 5 excellent folks that are working on it right now in the school committee, and you have 3 excellent challengers. So I wish the public a lot of luck. I'm running for school committee because I'm very interested in the community. When I first came in and running for school committee, I wanted to use my skill sets as a business owner to bring that part of the dynamic to the board, looking at it from how people actually run and make money. And that's something I think I've been invaluable in terms of the budget, how processes actually work. I think I'm a good listener. I don't think I have all the answers, and when I make a mistake, I'm quick to apologize and quick to really to address it to make sure that we're moving the Lowell Public Schools in the right direction. Recently, I now have a 4-year-old, and the 4-year-old is going to be going to Lowell Public Schools, so now I actually have a human interest into it. So I thank the public for taking the time, and respectfully asking for one of your 6 votes to serve in your seat for the Lowell School Committee. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Dave. Then we'll
Yes.
go Jackie, then we'll do Rob.
My name is Dave Conway, and I would like to thank the Lowell Sun for putting this forum together. I think it's something that these forums are, I think, extremely important for the public to understand what the candidates are all about, and this kind of gives a bit of a snapshot. And I also want to thank the candidates because it's not an easy task to put their name on the ballot, and again, I congratulate each and every one of them. Back 3 years ago, I decided to run for school committee after spending a number of years working in the school department, and that's what I thought I could bring to the school committee. Someone that has actually been there, someone that's been in the classroom, someone that's been in the schools basically all my life. And that's what I want to continue to bring if the voters feel that they would like to put me there for another 2 years. So I humbly ask for one of your votes in November 8th. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave. Jackie?
Hi, my name is Jackie Doherty. I have invested the last 13 years of my life fighting to improve the Lowell Public Schools. The first 5 as a leader on the citywide parent council, the last 8 as a member of the school committee. Other than raising my own children, this work on the school board has been the most meaningful for me. And I appreciate the honor of having the opportunity to serve our community. I take my job very seriously. I consider myself a fierce advocate for our students and our community. I work at the state level. I have been nominated by the Mass Association of School Committees to be their vice president for the 2012 term. I serve on the Lowell Immigration Commission. I have been a member of the Lowell Youth Development Collaborative since it began 4 years ago. So I am a tireless advocate for our students and our community, and I would appreciate your vote for Jackie Doherty on November 8th. Thank you.
And challenger Robert Gignac.
Thank you to the Lowell Sun and to the public for caring about the Lowell School Committee. I'm running based on my experience in the classroom. I attended the Lowell Public Schools and graduated Lowell High School in 2007. So my experiences in the high schools are still very relevant. I would like to bring honest and positive energy to the committee. I want to put the students first, and I would like to improve communication at all levels. I believe I have a unique perspective to bring to the committee as a student that wasn't there too long ago. And I would really appreciate your vote on November 8th, and thank you.
I'd like to thank you for watching this afternoon's last debate, sponsored by the Sun, last school committee debate, and remind you to vote on November 8th. Have a good night. Thank you, everybody.
Good job.
Thank you. Good job. Good job.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.